Good morning. Welcome to the Sustainability Action Society at the Capital Club. Today, I have a distinguished panel of experienced people in the recycling industry, and we're here to talk about the recycling within the GCC, the challenges and aspirations going forward. All of you have extensive experience across a wide spectrum of recycling. Right? The GCC is one of the highest per capita rates of disposal and one of the lowest rates of recycling per capita. What do you think could be done to reverse it? Right? So we have a much higher rate of recycling per capita within the region itself.
Thank you, Harp. Appreciate the opportunity. Capital Club has been so generous to entertain such a timely and very important topic here. I believe the recycling rate is adversely going with the higher per capita income, unfortunately, because people think they are so well off and they don't need really to go and follow the last dimes and pennies out there, forgetting the fact that this is where the opportunities are lying, and it is very extensively important for any society to recycle its own end-of-life products. So what I realize here is that the poorest countries have the highest recyclability rates because they do go down to the last penny of their money's worth, and there are certain restrictions. So I believe that if we would like to really drive the force of recycling, it goes with the carrot and the stick. Now, we either have to put some incentives on the recyclabilities and on the households to start with, where the generation of the recyclables start at, and put some sort of an educational campaigns where the household members start recycling right back at home and do the assortment where it is generated, so that will make the whole downstream is convenient and comfortable for the rest of the cycle to be completed. Otherwise, we may have to levy certain recyclability fees on the households and on societies that they do not really take care of it generically and on their own. So I believe one of those two would work. So I'm always a favorable guy, go with the carrot, and if it doesn't work, we'll put the stick and having some of those levies working out. So let's see how it works throughout. My rest of the panelists here, what's their opinion?
Rabih?
Yeah, I would like to second this opinion, and just to add a couple of elements into it, that waste mismanagement is not a mechanical problem, it's a behavioral problem. And for us to get everybody to recycle, it's very important to tackle the behavioral aspect of things and understand why they are not recycling, and put the systems and the incentives and the gamification and the engagement that allows people to build the awareness, know how to recycle, and do it successfully. At the same time, it's not a one entity decision. It's not only the government, it's not only the residents, it's not only the companies. All of these three entities have to work hand in hand to make sure that these programs are successful. And then finally, the infrastructure has to be in place to ensure that when people actually recycle, the recyclables get preserved and they don't get commingled with the rest of the waste, and they're able to recover value from these recyclables. So these are the three pillars that ensures that successful recycling programs are able to take place.
Nicole?
Yes. Look, I think that the amount of waste that is being produced here in the GCC will continue to grow, and that is, I would say, consequence of the positive vibe that this whole region is going through. I mean, this region is growing, is attracting a lot of people that have the means to spend money, and yeah, that means more waste. One of the weak points, look, I approach it a bit more from a technology or a contracting perspective, is that there's still quite a lot of mixed MSW. I mean, there's not much segregation going on. So waste that is coming to facilities is mixed, and that puts some constraints on the possibilities to recycle on affordable and on a big scale. The good news is that there are still technologies that can even handle that kind of waste and apply a form of recycling, alternative fuels. We have few good examples, but of course, the best thing would be to take a two-track policy and really incentivize people to segregate at the source, because that will take a lot of additional costing and additional complexity. For example, for making good compost, the fact that there's mixed MSW and you can sort out organics, but these organics are nearly always contaminated. I mean, if we want to prevent that, of course, the carrot and the small stick approach is definitely also a path to follow.
Thank you. Adding to the point, I just want to touch on one critical element here. See, GCC is unique. At least the Middle East is unique. You have a lot of nationalities coming from different part of the world. So you cannot have a single yardstick for measuring their waste awareness or waste handling behavior. So as Rabih said, it's a behavior problem. But one of the biggest challenge being an operator, what we face is the how we can tackle this behavior problem. Awareness sessions or awareness programs. But what is happening, it's a floating population. If you look at this country itself, the people comes in and goes out in every 3 years or 4 years. Either they move from their existing community to another community where the waste management system is totally different. So these are all challenges for setting up a proper segregation program or building something, some sustainable waste management program across a community or across a city. Again, the awareness around waste management or recycling. People are interpreting based on their convenience. What can be recycled, what cannot be recycled. So if you go to 10 communities in this place, 10 communities are segregating 20 things differently. So that's another challenge. What is really valuable? What can be recycled? How we can reduce the contamination? Even if we have segregation happening, there is a lot of contamination coming in. Why it is? People don't know. It's again, they believe this is recycling. Some believe no recycling is happening here. So that's one of the biggest challenge for any organization or any entity to set up a business in terms of recycling here. That is one of the reason our recovery rates are going down or the recycling rates are going down, because the contamination level at all the recycling points are very high. There is a need of education, and there is a need of a standard policy or a standard framework. What can be recycled, what cannot be recycled, how many segregation points should be there. As we all know, waste management, we believe the best way to keep it simple so it works. If you complicate it, it never works. It will get more complicated. So if you are going with 5 segregation points in one area, you will never get that 5 segregated material. You will get everything mixed in that. So that basically pulls you down. So you have to have a consensus among the operators, authorities, and get that consensus among the users that this can be recycled, this cannot be recycled. This should be segregated well, or this should be moved out from the waste. So we get better value out of waste, and slowly we will get where we want to be in terms of high recycling rates. And that's what my point on this.
So I picked up from all of you, all 4 of you, right? The common denominator appears to be what I call change management.
Yeah.
Right? Change management coming partly from people's own behavior, the carrot and stick approach, partly from the lack of cohesion in terms of standards to be applied, so that recycling becomes a consistent terminology, a consistent process across the board, right? Okay. Who do you think is responsible for pushing through this change management, supporting it? Should it be the government? Should it be the consumers? Should it be, businesses? Who do you think should be the main driver for this change management?
See, sorry.
Please start.
The infrastructure, or when I say infrastructure, it's not the physical infrastructure. The policies, the structures, how it should work, it should come from the authorities. As I said, there should be a basic consensus among the operators, among the recycling companies, among the organizations, what can be recycled, what cannot be recycled. If you are not aligned on that, you cannot talk to a consumer or you cannot talk to a resident what needs to be recycled. So if one person or one company is going and telling them, okay, let us recycle, let us put 5 bins. It is exciting for them. Okay, I have 5 segregation points. How do we really need 5 bins there? Can we get enough material out of that? No, I mean, that is where it makes a difference. So first, there should be a consensus among the recycling companies. See, here we have, I'm an operator, they are operator, they are product, I mean, recycling, they are real recycling companies. He's got a technology. So we all know when we get what we want, our business will move more smoothly, and we'll be investing back into the industry to make it more and more scale it up. So if we start getting more and more mixed or contaminated, or I mean, we put an infrastructure and we are getting pure waste from there. Tomorrow, if somebody is, it's a discouraging for the entity who is putting it has into it, and also it is for that community. There could be 10% who is contaminating it, but the 90% is doing it, but that 90% is getting contaminated. So yes, there should be the policy making is very important. The policy making should be based on what is actually happening on ground. It should not be duplicating from what is happening in other part of the world, because there it is different. There the living setup is different. The people are different. So here it's a mixed population, mixed nationality. Okay. So that will make a huge impact.
Dr. Salim?
I think there are three major pillars for this remedy. The first one is education, and the second one is education, and the third one is education. Now, education has different scales of rubbing it down from the top policymakers to the household member. It goes through the understanding the value of the recyclables and what is called the end of life, which is the word that I hate to use, which is waste. I do not like the word waste because there isn't anything called waste. Where there is a waste, it's really a wealth involvement here, where we have to look into it from a different perspective. First of all, if we understand the money language, economically, we do understand it is a raw material which is very essential for our industries. It is raw material that has got value. It is what I call the urban mining. It is a valuable raw material at a fraction of cost compared to the virgin metals or plastics or whatever you call it. It consumes only a fraction of 5 to 10% in terms of energy consumption, and the time cycle of bringing it back into the mainstream of the cycle of industry. If it is related to the opportunity of investment, if I'm a finance guy, this is trillions of dollars worth of investments worldwide that has a huge employment opportunities, and it generates a lot of revenue. A lot of the European Union countries, they do have recycling rates restrictions going up to 55 and 60% on some countries where they would be qualified or not qualified for any subsidies, depending on the recycling rate. If I'm talking about environment, that is very much essential for the reduction of carbon footprints. The recyclables, which are happening from the end of life, bringing it down to the mainstream of industry, saves about 95% of carbon emissions, and also it contributes to the global warming reduction, which is one of the main points of the agenda on the G20s or in the decision makers. If it's on the paradigm of environmental come socio-economic sustainability, it is it. We do realize it because we've been in the recycling business for 4 decades, and we understand this is our main revenue generating business. So it goes down from education to the decision makers to draft the policy, then to the implementation of those policies, where ultimately the system has to be in place. I believe a lot of the recycling facilities from ground up, from the bins sorting out until the final disposal, which is preventing the landfilling and incinerators systems from being the major home of it, is being in place. And I think some of my colleagues are here having that as their core business. So once the education up is there to the level, we do appreciate the value involved, the health-related component, which we all have paid the toll during the COVID-19, and we have realized if you're not in a good health, you cannot even perform your day-to-day responsibilities. And with that, I'll pass it on to the rest of the panelists.
I think there are two things that we should sort of accept. How unfortunately that how good we will implement the policy, recycling has its limits. It is difficult. And second, that a lot of waste to fuel, waste to energy, or pure recycling solutions are not sustainable in itself. I mean, you do need to put logistics in. You do need to put money in energy sometimes also. So they need always this additional financing to make it feasible. Not always, but often. And that's why, and I think a good start has been made in a lot of the Emirates, is increasing the gate fees. I think they're now going to 100 dirhams a ton here on a global scale. That is not too high, but that's definitely a very good step in compared with a few years ago. I think that is something that is needed without first of all, maybe discouraging a little bit the production of waste, although that has its limit. If not, then this money can be used to make recycling solutions feasible.
Okay. Rabih?
Yeah, so just answering your question, Harb, on whose responsibility this is, and it's everybody's responsibility. And you have the three different stakeholders, which is the government, the companies, and the residents. And it should be everybody's responsibility to encourage recycling for that to happen, particularly for sorting from source and getting it captured at source. However, it's the government's role to be the orchestrator, right? So somebody has to orchestrate that conversation, ensure that companies and brands are actually responsible for the products they're putting on the market, residents are complying, and then the government is taking progressive policy steps to be able to orchestrate this interaction in a way that doesn't harm any of one of these entities and continue the economy to be flourishing. So it's a very delicate role that governments have to play, mixing innovation, mixing private sector participation, encouragement, and being agile and reading how the market is reacting and being able to react very quickly. So they have to retract and play that role to enable the sector from happening properly. The last thing the government is to say, I'm going to try and do everything on my own. And that is very difficult. And we've seen a lot of different examples where that hasn't played very well.
Okay. Rabih, you recently wrote an article on why 2023 could be the year of recycling for MENA. Could you please elaborate more on this?
Absolutely. So as we know, 2023 is the year of sustainability in the UAE. And it's the year that COP is happening, COP28. So it's very important that we grasp this opportunity and be able to spark recycling of happening, because residents are ready. We talk with residents all the time, and they are ready to actually embrace recycling, and they understand the value of it, particularly after COVID, and people are more aware on these elements. Companies are putting more aggressive targets for themselves beyond what the government is telling them to do in terms of capturing the recyclables that are there. So even companies are ready. And governments definitely are very much willing. They are putting very aggressive targets of waste diversion, higher than Europe, for example, that has been diverting for many, many decades. So the elements are there. We need to grasp that moment in 2023 in making sure that the spark happens. We start actually doing this at scale. We start iterating and fixing anything that is not working well to enhance the ecosystem and make sure that this year is the year that we start going into recycling.
BESIX has been a pioneer in developing large-scale recycling solutions, right? Examples include Emirates RDF, Safi, and Dubai Waste-to-Energy. Now, government funding seems to be available for infrastructure to build waste management facilities, right? But it doesn't appear to be the same for recycling facilities, right? What do you think could be done to channel more government funding towards these type of projects, you know?
Yeah, I think I can repeat what I just said.
Right.
I mean, all these two basically the 2 waste projects that we are developing now.
Right.
So the waste to energy facility in Dubai with 5,000 tons a day capacity opening up in 2024. It goes with a gate fee. The same goes for our Emirates RDF plant in Umm Al Quwain.
Okay.
Yes, there is definitely for cement plants an economy to be made, but if you see the logistics, I mean, we are solving in those 2 projects a waste problem.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that there is a certain cost to that. We mitigate those costs by producing green electricity or supplying an alternative fuel beneficiary for cement plants. But there's always this element of steady stream of gate fee. Basically, the penalty or the price you pay for solving your waste problem. I know it's very generic, but it comes down to that.
Okay.
As a recycler, Harb, I agree. So the gate fees actually help me in making sure that we divert as much waste as we can up front, and then everything ends up in the facility, then you have to pay the gate fee. So raising the bar of creating waste actually helps a lot and makes commercial conversations happen very smoothly.
One very useful tool here which can be introduced is to where the government can study and implement the carbon footprints reduction benchmarking, because in our group we have been for 3.5, 4 decades involved in the metals recycling in particular, and we've been recycling on an average of about 500,000 tons a year of ferrous and non-ferrous. If we look into the carbon reductions, which relates to the volume which we've been generating, it is measured to about 9.5 million tons of carbon emissions reductions. But unfortunately, there is no way of benchmarking the magnitude of the carbon reductions and the energy saving component. If that is being in place, then the government will understand that the private sectors like ourselves are really on par with their major decision takers agenda, which is going to the zero waste by the end of 2030. And then they will be facilitating certain finances, infrastructure, and that will propel the entire sustainability altogether.